Hello everyone and welcome back to the Class 47 Peter YouTube channel, and you're joining me today on another video of the new layout. So to start with in this video, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you guys that everything works. Because in the last video you saw the track being laid, as well as the wiring of the layout, and I discussed the ideas and the plans for the new layout as well. Now, I know you guys are already seeing the new layout in action already because I've already uploaded my review on the Acura scale Class 37. But I still want to show the testing being carried out on screen in this video because it gives me something for me to talk about, but also just to show you guys that everything works. So I haven't set out full-length trains, I've just set out a couple of locos just to test the layout. So on the narrow gauge line we have the double fairly running, and then over on the main line I have the W1, one of them anyway, in the original as-built experimental condition, and one of the 9Fs. And even though at this point the layout has only been up and running for a few minutes, all seems to be well. There's been no issues that have cropped up, which is great to see, because there's no fun in a model railway if there are problems, but that's why we do the testing. Because the last thing you want to do is to go into ballasting and then do the testing to only find that nothing works. That's going to be a nightmare then. So it's best to test it out now while the tracks have not been ballasted, because then that way it's far easier to rectify any problems. It's also important that we make sure that the locos are able to negotiate the curves, most notably on the up line, because they use 4th radius. And there's the W1, and she has no problems going around those at all. And if you just get up close to the rear pony wheels, it has the modified rear pony wheels. I've already done a video on that modification. So now that we know that the main lines are working, we now have to test these adjacent lines. So first of all we have the W1. No problems there at all. Now for the 9F. Success. Those are working as well, so well happy with that. Now I may have already tested the adjacent lines, but I still need to make sure that when the points are set against the locos that works as well. But to stop the W1 and the power's off. As you can see, that works. Just turn the controller on. So that's great. So that's exactly what you want to see. To be honest, I don't think I really need to show the same thing with the 9F, but I might as well do it anyway, just to make sure. Yep, as you can see, that's working as well. Happy days. So now I'm going to do the same thing with the narrow gauge railway by the passing loop. And I've carried out this same testing already on the double O gauge part of the layout, but I've still got to make sure that it works on the narrow gauge railway as well. So I just change the points. I'm not sure yet if I'm going to have point motors. I doubt it, because I can pretty much reach all the points that are on the layout, but we'll see. So yeah, change the points, and as you can see, that does exactly what I want it to do. Apply the power and that doesn't move. So I can run another train into this section here without problems. So now that pretty much most of the testing is now basically complete, and I do say most of it because those sidings on the narrow gauge line still need to be sorted out, but we are still otherwise now in the position where we can actually now start adding scenery and detail to the layout. Now before I start showing you any of the first bits of detail that have started to appear on the layout, a couple of things have been changed in regards to how the track has been laid, because there have been a couple of issues that I wanted to rectify and iron out basically. First of all, there is a change regarding the narrow gauge line, as you can see. Now previously it was a bit more wibbly wobbly. You've got this section here, as you can see it goes into this sweeping curve here. That section over there, where I'm pointing to, just over there, that was also pretty much laid out in the same way as this one here. At the time I was satisfied with it, but then it was one of those things where it came back to me and I thought, you know what, this could be done better. So removing the pins out of the track, which I had to hammer them out from underneath the baseboard, because it is a lot more harder to remove the pins out of the 009 track compared to the 00 stuff, because you can actually damage the 009 track more easily. You have to particularly be careful of the chairs and the sleepers, because they can get broke. I did actually break a couple on that one section of track over there, and had to use a small amount of super glue to glue the rails into place, basically to sort the tissue. I think once the track has been ballasted and then weathered, I don't think it's really going to be all that noticeable. But all I did was I just removed the pins, and then I just basically gave this section here more of a long sweeping curve, so it looks less wibbly wobbly now, and I do think that that, in my opinion, looks better. Another issue that has been rectified is this area here, where these lines are. Now there was actually an issue with the baseboard somewhat, because they were basically like this. They were going like that. Can't understand why, to be quite honest, because the baseboards, well, I mean, for a start, this wood alongside the frames seems to be as straight as it can be. There are some battens in between the frames to support it and stop any bowing. So perhaps maybe some of the boards have been warped. It shouldn't be, because it was brand new wood. Shouldn't have warped that much. So I can't really understand what was happening there. But you know, it was something that really that had to be sorted out as best as it could, because this is where the station's going to be. And when I was trying it out, particularly where there is a noticeable dip going in between the rails, it just didn't look right. If you can have a station there and suddenly we got a shot of a train arriving at the platforms, if it's at an angle where perhaps you've got the platform in front of the camera with the train coming into the platform and there is a dip there, it's not quite going to look right. I know with model railways that there is going to be a compromise, but you know, if you can help it, you don't want too many dips. There are going to be some in some areas, but like I said, you don't want too many of them. I mean, if this was a bookshelf, or something, it wouldn't really matter. But on a model railway, it does seem to matter, and it is more noticeable because of course you've got track on it. So what we've done is we've just put some packing underneath the baseboards. There is a slight gap underneath the baseboards now, but to be honest with you, I don't really care about that. As long as this track is a lot more straight and it's not dipping in the middle like it was before, which you probably would have noticed in a couple of review videos, because I have been doing some of those in between doing work on the layout, then that's fine. That's another reason really as well why I haven't done any ballasting or anything, because I want to make sure that everything is all fine and it's all to my satisfaction before I go into ballasting. It didn't cause any harm to take out the screws by doing damage to the track or anything, because it didn't. You know, all the track is perfectly fine, as is all the detail, etc. that's already on the layout. But like I say, we've just put some packing underneath here, and that seems to have cured it. So it does look a lot better than what it was previously. Right, so I'm now giving you this view, looking down this section of track from this angle. And now it might be, looking at it, that there does appear to be a slight hump there. Not much of one, but there is one there. But to be honest, I don't really care, because as I have said before, there are going to be compromises with some other railways. You won't necessarily get them completely and perfectly flat, especially with a floor like I've got in here. But that is still looking a lot better than what it was previously. I'd rather have a hump than a dip, basically. So I'm just going to do a quick test with this. So I have got the class 143 out. And I think that looks alright. I think that looks good. Might as well just quickly show it on the other line as well. And if there is a dip there, it's very slight. Nowhere near as prominent as it was before. And that unit now seems to be performing a lot better on this layout as opposed to the last one. Particularly going around corners. Right, so enough of the waffle of a couple of changes that have been made and also just testing something out. Let's now look at the first details that have been appearing on the layout. First of all, we have the orange UTX trunking. This is a scale model scenery product, so I have just slid some under the rails. With the exception of that one there though, that line there, I had to remove the pins and take it out to cut out a sleeper to fit that one in. But it's not going to really be noticeable once the track's been ballasted and weathered. Then what I've done, I've taken some thin wire, glued it together, spray painted that with black spray paint, and I've done that to represent cables coming out of the trunking. That's just been glued into place. I know most of it is going to be covered over once it's been ballasted, but so we'll be making sure that some of it is going to be exposed, because when you go out into the real world you will come across some places where the wire is exposed and the cables. So that's something I've done there, because that will add some more interest and detail for the layout. I also do think that adding wire there to represent cables for the UTX trunking, that itself adds more detail, because it does look better than just having the UTX cable trunking there and not having any cables coming out of it. I've also been adding some scale model scenery concrete trunking as well. Whilst it is messy to glue it together, I still find it very satisfying to put it together. One thing I in particularly like with these kits, there's two things. One, you have the option of being able to remove the lids on these, which I have done, so that itself just adds more detail rather than having the lids on all of them. But also, it comes with printed detail for the inside. In this case, it's the cables. It is just detail that's printed onto paper, but when it's added in the trunking and you can see it, I still think it looks really good. And then what I've done is I've given all the trunking a coat of Woodland Scenics concrete paint. I couldn't find any other manufacturer producing paint that makes a concrete colour, so I went for the Woodland Scenic stuff. It does recommend to dilute the paint before you use it, but I found that I could get away with it. I managed to use the paint perfectly without having to dilute it down. So I think it's one of those things really, it boils down to either you do it or don't. You don't necessarily have to paint it either, but I have. So with the cable trunking, I have made sure that not all of the lids are in place and intact on the trunking. I have, in a number of sections, added some where the lids have been removed, and that just adds more detail to them. I especially love how you can see the cables inside them then, so it is a great bit of detail to have. Particularly with this one here, this section here, this has the most number of lids removed. This one in particularly has one missing. And again, when you look down, you're able to see the cable detail inside there. It's just fantastic to look at. So it is definitely something worth doing. And what I have done as well, with at least a couple of the lids, I've cut them in half using a scalpel, such as that one there, and then that one. And that's just to represent the lids that have basically split and cracked. Being made of concrete, that does happen. I have seen that myself with some cable trunking lids, so it's nice to do that. I haven't done that with any of the others, but I've just done that with at least a couple. Then going down along here, you can see that there's less lids in sections removed, because I didn't want to go about and do the same thing for all of the trunking, if you know what I mean. It's nice to have still a couple of lids in other sections in places, but still nice to have some as well that don't have any lids removed as well, such as this section here. Over here you have a Western Wagon Works 3D printed raised cable trunking, if you like, which you can buy off the site. That was then painted up in the same concrete colour from Woodland Scenics. Then that was super glued into place, and the reason I used super glue was because it was a little bit bent actually, so applying a small amount of super glue and then putting some pressure on it with my hands, that made it set into place. You've got some more trunking over here. One of the lids has been removed, and here you've got the T-junctions, plus you have Scamble Scenery relay box platform. Another nice kit to put together, and then that was painted in a dark grey colour. And the relay boxes on that are reused from the previous layout, and they are made by Will's Kits. Then over in this section over here, I've added a couple of Scamble Scenery drain catch pits. Those two have been reused from the previous layout, and then in between those you have a Western Wagon Works 3D printed girder centre support. That's been painted up and it has been weathered. I've done nothing too fancy, that's just using black wash from Humbrol. Took ages for it to arrive, but say no more because it was delivered by Hermes. So I've not done anything too fancy, I've just given it a coat of the black wash. And I think that that looks really good. It's simple but effective, and I really like it. And that's the first piece of weathering that's on the layout, and there shall be some more weathering cropping up as well in other places. So I'm looking forward to doing that. And that does add more realism and detail itself. So the reason for doing this area in particular, with the relay box platform and the cable trunking, as well as with this section being raised and then you've got the rest of the trunking lowered, that was inspired by doing research on the internet looking at photographs. I have seen some areas in places where you do have scenes like this. You've got your relay box platform with your relay boxes on, then you have your T-junctions with cable trunking running up to the relay box platform. You then have your cable trunking, and then there's one section where the trunking is raised and then the rest of it's lowered. And that was just something that I wanted to replicate on the layout. It's not something exactly identical, but I've recreated something similar using with what's available on the market. And by doing that I've been able to recreate something similar on the layout, and I think it adds a fantastic bit of detail. So with the first of the details now starting to appear on the layout, I'm now going to move on to something else. I now feel I'm ready to go into ballasting. I've done enough testing with this layout to ensure that it all seems to be working to my satisfaction, and I'm generally and overall pleased with how it's all working. So we can now make a start on ballasting. Now my plan for the ballast is I don't want to add the same colour everywhere on the layout. This time I want to do something different. I want to add some different colours of ballast in various places on the layout, because not only is that going to make it look more varied and more interesting, but also more realistic. Ballast in real life isn't all the same colour, and when you go out into the real world, whether it be on a heritage line or even on the network, you will see that there are different tones and colours of ballast, even different types. You might come across one area where on one side it looks more coarse and on the other side it looks more fine or medium, if you get what I mean. So adding different tones and colours to ballast, I think is going to make it look very interesting. It will certainly create a very good effect. I haven't gone for every single different type of colour of ballast you can buy on the market. I've just been out and bought and got some colours here that I think should make a nice variety. And something I've already learned with this, if you are going to mix some colours together in order to create different tones and colours etc. for ballast, I have learnt that really if you mix together coarse ballast with fine and medium, it doesn't really work out that well. I tried this and the effect isn't really all that good, so I think, to be honest, what you really need to do is to mix in some medium ballast. I think what you want to do if you are going to mix colours of ballast together, really, I think it should either be all fine or all medium or coarse, whatever. And for the ballasting, it's mostly going to be medium. I think it needs to be about at least fine or medium, because I think, to be honest, coarse looks a little bit overscale, to be honest. Especially when you compare the size of stones to the sleepers. Now I'm not going to necessarily come out and ballast every single section of track everywhere on the layout in one go. I am going to start off with this section here, ballasting all the way down along here. Now I'm not going to go for the same effect and colours of ballast in this area, because not every section you see is going to be all the same colour. I want to have, again, as I've said, some variation. So, for example, this area here, where it goes up to where these two baseboards meet, where this join is, I'm going to add, like, for example, one mix of ballast. I might potentially do it on the same for both tracks or different on both lines, just to add some variation and a bit more interest. And then on the other half, on this area, going down all along here, I can add some different colour variations and tones. That's my plan. So this is where we are currently at with the ballast. So this line, I've used medium grey, light grey and some dark brown. That's all been mixed together into a pot, shook it about, and that's just been laid down. And then the other line, that uses buff, light grey, and there's also some dark brown in there. And you can see the variation in the colours. For the outside of the rails, this line, the up line, I've used a fine ballast for that, that's light grey. And then on this side I've used the medium light grey. And you can see what I've done with the middle as well. I've used some dark brown mixed with some light grey. You've then got medium grey in the middle, and then you have on the outside of that you've got some buff as well. And then I have, as you can see here with this effect in particular, I've spreaded a lot of that in the middle there. And I do like that particular effect as well. That was done basically just by using my fingers to try and smooth it down, and I do quite like that particular effect there. Now it doesn't really matter if the ballasting is not perfect, because nothing in real life is. Not all ballast, you see, has been laid out very nice and even and smooth. You will come across some patches and areas of ballast where it's just been dumped down, it's not really been smoothed out. And in some cases some of the sleepers are even covered over, and that's exactly what's happened here. So what I've tried to do is I've tried to not make it look all uniform. I've tried to make it look more realistic. It's not finished yet because I've got to glue this all down, and then I'm going to be adding some more ballast to this area, so to simulate areas where they've patched up and touched up ballast where it was needed. And again, as true to real life, it would be a different colour, so that's what I'm aiming for. So it's not finished yet, but so far I am happy with it. So now I can glue down the ballast that I've laid. So what we have here, this is a method I've been using for years now, and I've not had any issues with it. It's always worked well. This is a 50-50 mix of PVA glue and water, and a very small amount of washing up liquid. And I've just let that settle, if you like, for an hour, only because I was doing other things as well. And so I'm just going to pour that into a tub and then pipette it onto the ballast using a pipette. So all this ballast has now been glued. So what you've got to do now is to let the glue dry. I wouldn't recommend even contemplating running any trains running over wet ballast, because you might ruin them. And before I decide to go and add more ballast, because this isn't finished yet, I'm still going to add some other little bits of ballast here and there to make it look like workmen have come back and they've obviously put some ballast down in areas where it needed it and touched and filled areas in. That will be a different colour again. And you will need to do a few touch-ups as well by adding a little bit more ballast to fill in holes, basically, areas where you missed. And also you might at this stage also find you get bits of ballast on top of the sleepers. So I'd wait till that is dried and then scrape that off. But so far it's looking really good. So I've left this ballast to dry overnight and it's now rock solid, as you can see. So I'm now happy to move on to the next step and continue adding more ballast to this area. So I'm going to call the ballasting on this section of track done. I mean, I could, if I wanted to, go a bit more further afield with this in regards to ballasting, but no. I'm going to leave it as it is because I'm pleased with it. I haven't made it look too uniform, as you can see. I've done it to the best of my ability to add a variety of different colours, and I think on the whole I am very happy with it. So I have put the rest of the ballast down, and so that's now gluing. The only thing I really need to do now is to go along with a screwdriver and go along to basically remove bits of ballast that's up against the rails. You know what I mean? But I can't really do that until the glue is dried. So what I've really been doing is I've just been adding bits of ballast onto areas where they would have come back during engineering works, and added some ballast where it needed to be. such as, like, for example, touching it up or whatever. Along this side, on this line, you can see I have added some areas where I have added some light grey ballast on top of the fine stuff. I haven't gone down the whole length adding an entire row of this stuff. I've just added a few bits of it in patches. And then over on that side I've added some buff. Again, doing exactly the same thing with the light grey ballast on the other side that you just saw. I've just done this in a few areas, in no area in particular necessarily. I've just added it in a few random places. And what I've also done as well is I've added some black calcium sand, but only a very, very small amount of it, and you can just about see it. And I've just added that just to represent cinders from steam engines, because it ain't just diesel and electrics that are run. This is basically one of these layouts where I basically run what I like. I run steam, diesel and electric, so I've just added a few very slight sprinkling of cinders. So again, all I've got to do is just go along with a screwdriver, to be honest, and just to do some touch-ups if you like with that. But I'm more than happy with how this looks now. So we're now going to move on to the next section, which is here. I should actually quickly mention this particular bit of ballast here that I've put there. That was originally using fine light grey ballast, but then I decided to add some buff there instead, just to add a bit more colour there. And again, that's just done what they would do in real life. In an area that requires more ballast, they'd come and put some more ballast there to refill and touch up that area. And again, it would be a different colour. It wouldn't be the same colour from the ballast that's already been there. So for the next section of track I'm going to ballast, I think I'm going to use Woodland Scenic's medium dark brown and black calcium sand for this. Now, how I go about doing this, I'll just pour the ballast into a tub. And then basically, I'll put the lid back on. I'll just give the calcium sand a bit of a shake. Might put a little bit more of the brown in this. And then just put the lid on and give this a good shake. And there we go. I actually think that makes for a rather good effect. So this is all the ballast laid on this particular section of track, using the Woodland Scenic's dark brown and the black calcium sand, and I think that that's given a very good effect. I mean, obviously the other line needs ballasting, so does this middle section, and obviously the outside of the rails. But I'm quite pleased with how that's turned out. I did at one stage consider the idea of only having half of this using this scatter and then using the other half with a different scatter. But I decided in the end to not do that and go for this effect instead. Going all down along this particular straight section. And I'm glad I went for that in the end because I think that that looks better. So to ballast the other rail, I've gone for something that might be a bit ambitious here, because I've actually mixed together all the colours of ballast that I own and mixed them together into one, again using the same method I've been doing. That does give a very good effect, I think, and so I'm going to try that out by ballasting the other line. So that's the other line now ballasted. And you can see all the colours in there. And personally I think that looks really good. So that just needs to be glued down now. And then we can get on to adding more ballast. So over on this side I've added grey blend from Woodland Scenic. So this is basically the dark and light greys that are mixed together. Now again, I haven't been really neat and perfect with this because again that's keeping it true to real life. If you're doing ballasting and it's not perfect and it's not perfectly neat, don't worry or beat yourself up over it, because when you go out into the real world you will see that ballasting is not perfect. It's not all neat and tidy, especially in some cases where they haven't got time to smooth it all out and make it all even and neat. So I have tried to replicate something like that in model form. I haven't exactly been perfect with this. Again, that's keeping it to reality. So that just needs my treated PVA glue, and then we'll leave that to set before we can then come on to the other side. And obviously the ballast in the middle, that will be getting a similar treatment. I'm probably going to do a few patches where new ballast has been laid down to fill in areas where it was required. But we'll see how it goes. So off camera I've been and added the ballast on this side of the line and what is the up line. Now I've added the dark brown stuff. Originally that was all going to be buff, but I've got a different idea instead for that, so I've used the dark brown. Now again, obviously it hasn't been laid out perfectly, but then that's realistic because again, nothing is perfect in real life. So it doesn't have to be all neat and tidy. So as I've said before, don't beat yourself up if it doesn't look very tidy or very neat, because it doesn't in real life a lot of the time. I can't say I've come across any ballasting that I would call perfect. So just got to let that glue dry before we can carry on. Also at this stage, once all the glue is settled, you can make touch-ups. I've already had to make some onto the brown ballast already. But there's still some more ballast to be adding into these areas yet, so this is not finished by any means. And of course there's still more ballasting yet to come. And another thing you can do as well is, in certain areas on the track, if you do mix ballast up and there's some areas where perhaps you don't have the mix, that's fine because it does give some variety. But you can always add a little bit, if you want to, on top of that later on. It's entirely up to you really how you choose to do that. But you can see the colour variety, the various different colours, really does make it, I think, look pretty good. You've got that nice variety, and again it's not all uniform, it's not all the same colour. And when we do get into track weathering and adding other bits and bobs, etc., I think that's going to really be brought to life and it's really going to stand out. So while that's happening, I've turned my attention to other areas on the layout to add other little bits of detail. I fitted some Pico dummy point motors. So all the points on the layout have these. This is one of them. And there's another. And the other two are just here. Now I have put them on those sides of the points because I didn't really want to put them in the middle where the ballast is going to be. So I decided to put them on the outsides. And I haven't left these clean either. I have given them a weathering. Again, nothing necessarily too fancy, just a black wash. But I haven't done the same weathering technique on these. I've gone for different weathering styles. Right, so what I've done is I've added some different colour ballast in a few patches in some areas in the middle of the two lines. So this is just to replicate that trackside workers have come back and they've filled in areas that needed more ballast, but it's obviously going to be a different colour as opposed to the stuff that was laid there previously. So first of all, just there in front of you, I've used some of the fine light grey ballast. Then further down I've used some of the medium ballast. This is the dark grey stuff. And then over on the other side, on the other line, I've used some Woodland Scenics medium buff ballast. So it is something that's worth doing. I haven't done this everywhere either. I've only done that in a few areas. And that just, I think, really just adds a lot more detail and variation. And again, if you are going to add some patches of different colour ballast in some places, again, it doesn't have to be perfect. I mean, if I wanted to, I could add more of it, but I don't want to add too much of it. So I've only done that in a few areas. Now for this section here, where I've used the brown ballast, I am still thinking of adding in some other ballast to that area to make it look like that there's some more ballast has been put there where it was needed. I am still thinking about that, but what I am going to do is I'm going to turn my attention to another area, and that's fine. You can always come back to these areas later on. You don't necessarily have to keep going at them hard. You can always take a break from them, go to another area on the layout, and then come back to the area that you was working on before. And so I'm now going to turn my attention to this area on the layout. So I'm going to be concentrating on ballasting the track and in between the rails. I've already got the ideas in mind for this. The ballast I'm going to be using for the middle is going to be this. Now, what I was doing was, if I had any leftover ballast, for example when ballasting all the other sections of the layout that I've already ballasted, I would save them. I'd put them in resealable bags. And what I've done basically is I've got what I've had left over in the bags, mixed it all together with my mix of greys that I had already from Woodland Scenics, mixed all the other ballasts that I had saved over in the resealable bags, added a little bit more some of the ballast I've already got using the grey, and that's basically come up with what we have here in this bag. So with the downline, what I've done is I've added Hatton's limestone ballast. First time I've used that on this layout. I haven't glued it down yet. I'm going to be doing that off camera. And also I think I need to spread out the ballast a bit more. If you do get some on the sleepers, that doesn't necessarily matter, because in reality I have seen some cases where there is some ballast on the sleepers. Right, so having left this ballast to dry overnight, it's now rock solid, as it should be. And I have used quite a lot of glue as well, mainly just for ballasting the middle of those two rails. But leaving it to dry overnight, and it's now set. So now I can turn my attention to ballasting this line here, which is now in need of ballast. But before I do that, I'm just going to add a bit more ballast in the middle, and that will soon all become clear. basically the idea I've had, what I'm trying to do is, in a couple of areas I've been laying ballast on the sides of the rails, as you can see here. Now the idea here is that ballast has been laid there where it needed some. I've used the buff, and I've used, in this area at least, the fine light grey. Although the glue is still drying on the light grey, so you can't really see much of the light grey at the moment because the glue is still wet. But the idea is here is that basically the buff is representing all the ballast when it was laid there, and over time the colours come out of it or whatever, and then at some point later on in the future more ballast needed to be put there, and so of course it would be a different colour, and they've used a lighter grey. It's something similar to what I've seen down at Water Orton when I went there. They put some ballast alongside the tracks. There was one bit of it that used a lighter grey, and there was some other bit of it that was a different colour, similar to the colour that you see on the buff actually. So I've tried to replicate something similar to that. I've done the same thing there as well, and I've done that for that little area there as well, but for that patch I haven't done the same thing. I've just added there some medium light grey ballast. So in a couple of areas, as I say, I've just added some different colour ballast, but I haven't done that everywhere. I've just done that in a couple of areas, and doing that it adds more realism, it adds more detail and variety. And again, this ballast doesn't need to be perfectly laid because it never is in real life, but you can still see the ballast that I laid there before. But it's just nice to have some different colour ballast laid there. I mean, I could have done the same thing like I've done with the other areas, added some buff there as well for that little area, but I decided to be different. You could add some more ballast in the middle as well, add some different colour stuff, but I didn't really think there was much point because the ballast that you're seeing in the middle of the two tracks is pretty much every ballast that I've got mixed together, so there's different colours in there already. So I'm going to be leaving that as it is, because I'm happy with it. I've still got to ballast the other rail now, so I'll be turning my attention to that. So for the other line, what I've done with that is I've used Woodland Scenic's grey ballast. This is the darker grey stuff. So it has just been laid down, so the glue is still drying. And I think it is basically a similar shade of grey to the Hatton's limestone stuff. Maybe some slight different variation in the tone of grey perhaps. And I have yet to ballast the outsides of the lines along here. I haven't done that yet because, to be honest, I've still got to add scenery to those places. But this is the thing, you can always add ballast again later, so it'll probably be around then when I come to do the scenery where those parts of the rails will get ballast. I don't know yet. Haven't quite decided on that. But I am pleased with how the ballasting has come out. So let that dry before we do anything else. ballast is now dried for this section. What I've done is the tracks have been ballasted using medium ballast. This is the light grey stuff. In the middle of them I've used the brown ballast, and then on top of that I've sprinkled on some, it's a mix of both the light grey, there's some buff in there, and there's also a little bit of brown sprinkled on there as well. And that does give, in my opinion, a very interesting effect. A very different and interesting variation of some colours. Right, so all the brown ballast that you can see on the upline, all along here, what I've done with that is I've sprinkled it very lightly with this stuff. This is a mix of various different ballasts that I have that are mixed together, and I've just used that to, as lightly as I can, just sprinkle it on top of the brown ballast. So it does look quite interesting. And also, of course, in places I have used various different colours of ballast to patch up in a few areas. Again, so that it was areas that required ballast. And again, it wouldn't all be the same colour. My idea here, because I've used a mix of different ballasts, my thought process here is that they came and, for example, did one area, but then over time have come back and more areas have required more ballast. And again, it wouldn't be all the same colour. They've used what they've got and other different mixes of colour and all. Hence the reason why it's all different colours. And there's that one there, which is the same stuff that I've very lightly scattered on the brown ballast as well. So that stops it from looking all uniform and it adds more interest. I've also added a couple more patches of ballast onto this area. I wasn't planning to add any more, but this is something that you can do later on. You can come back and add ballast into other areas. This one here, that's just the light grey stuff, which I have pretty much nearly run out of this stuff. So I have got a new bag coming. And then this ballast here, the glue is still drying, but what I've used for that is a mix of the Woodland Scenics fine grey ballast and the medium grey ballast. So again, the glue's still drying, but it's basically just the, like I say, the fine grey ballast. That's exactly the same as that stuff, but it's got some few little bits of medium grey in it. And then turning my attention to this area here. Now, the tracks they've used Woodland Scenic's buff ballast. I have still yet to add ballast to the outside of the rails, but that's going to follow suit. In the middle I'm starting to ballast that, but because I've run out of ballast I've had to go out and buy another bag, which I'm waiting for to arrive. I've used the light grey stuff for the middle, and then just here what I've done is I've added a little bit of buff ballast just to patch in that area, because before there was a line going all the way down the middle, as you can more or less just see it. So to stop that from looking too perfect, I've just added that little bit there to, if you like, to try and separate that, I suppose. I originally did try sprinkling on this ballast over onto this area, but it wasn't really quite working out, so that little bit was just hoovered up. Hasn't left any damage to the ballast or anything, but you know, it is looking pretty good. So I'm going to call this area all along here, in regards to ballasting, to be done. I mean, when that bridge, that road over structure with a bridge on it, eventually goes along across here somewhere, there's a possibility that obviously when something goes along here, probably a wall of some description or whatever, then there's a chance that more ballast could possibly go there. Along by that wall could be added. That's the thing, you know, you can always add a bit more ballast later on. Well, ballasting is pretty much done, for the most part at least, on the 00 gauge line. Like I say, for the tracks for both lines I've used buff for that. I've also used some buff as well for the outsides, but because I did run out of some ballast, what I did was I then decided to add some more ballast, just to add some more colour variation. I wasn't planning to do it originally, but then I thought, you know what, I can do it. We'll add a bit more interest here. So I've added some Hatton's grey ballast, I think that's the limestone ballast. Then I've added some Woodland Scenic's brown ballast, that's for over there. And then along here I've just scattered a mix of dark and light grey ballast to ballast along there, as you can see. But I haven't done that everywhere because I have still wanted to leave some of the buff in place. And then in the middle of those two lines I've added Woodland Scenic's medium light grey ballast. And then what I've done in a couple of areas, I've actually added some Woodland Scenic's dark grey ballast mixed in with some black calcium sand. That's just to add some more colour variation, because all that grey ballast was quite in your face, I thought, and so I thought I'll add some in the middle of the two lines, because then that way it looks like the trackside workers have come back and they've added to add some ballast there at some point when it was perhaps needed, when it required some more ballast to be put there. And of course, as usually would be the way, it will be a different colour. And of course, obviously, when it comes around to track weathering, which I will not be doing in this video, that'll be for later on, what will happen then is I will be toning down the ballast in the middle, so it's not quite so clean and grey, shall we say. You won't be getting a completely dirty look, you'll just be getting probably like a light coat just to take the edge off it, if you get what I mean. I've also added some more of the dark grey mixed in with the black calcium sand there in the middle of the two lines, and I've added some more just over there. I wasn't sure about doing it at first, but I had the idea in my head, and so I thought I'd do it anyway. And I'm quite pleased that I have done that. Because at first I just sprinkled it on using a spoon to see if I liked it, and I instantly liked it, and so on went on the glue. So I'm well happy with that. And then I've added some small amounts of Woodland Scenics buff over there as well, of course. So all the colour variations, you know, they do blend really well together, I think. Now, at this point, whilst pretty much all the rest of the 00 gauge main line has been ballasted, the only section that hasn't been ballasted yet is all over there, where the station is going to be. That, of course, will be ballasted, that goes without saying, but that will not be done until I've at least added platforms. Because I don't just want to go down and put the ballast on, only to then find out later on that actually the platforms aren't going to fit in place. So I'd rather get those done first before I then go into ballasting that area. So I'm now going to turn my attention to the narrow gauge line. So that's going to be ballasted next. Right, so the first section of the narrow gauge line has been ballasted. And so what I've done for this is I've used Woodland Scenics medium grey, this being the dark grey stuff. Now obviously when it comes to this passing loop here, I have been sure not to over ballast the sides of the rails, because obviously that's where there's going to be a platform. So that's come out rather well. I'm rather pleased with that. Just got to let the remaining glue to dry for that. But what I'm going to do now is I can turn my attention to the remaining part of the narrow gauge line. Now I'm not going to use the same ballast. I'm going to use something a bit different. But I'm not going to, in every single section, use multiple different colours of ballast like I have done with the 00 gauge. Right, so what I've done with this section is this is a mix. This is a mix of the dark and light greys, the brown and buff ballast. And that gives some very nice colour variation. I haven't glued it down yet, but I'm just about to do that now. This is the ballast here. That's still got a bit left, so I might just be able to get away with ballasting a bit more of the 009 using that ballast. But yeah, it's coming on really well. So it is nice to have some colour variation in the ballast on the layout. Stops it all looking uniform. So I had enough of that mixed ballast left, and I've used that to ballast this end of the narrow gauge railway. Now I haven't added any ballast into the sides of that middle section there. Reason for that is because eventually that bit is all going to be covered up anyway, so you won't see that bit. So I didn't bother ballasting the sides. And then this end of the layout is also now ballasted on the narrow gauge line. Now I haven't quite used the same mix of ballast that I've been using, because I ran out of that stuff, so I had to mix some more. Now this stuff that I've used for this end, it's just the dark grey, light grey, some black and brown ballast. I didn't mix any buff with it because I've run out of that, so I had to mix something that's close to the other stuff that I've been using, but to be honest I don't think you'll be able to tell that much. But I have just put the glue down on that, so I've got to let that dry, and then that's the ballasting done for now. Like I say, I've still got the station area to do, and there is also this area to do here. That still needs to be sorted out first, but I'll be turning my attention, I think, to this at a later date. You know, this is the thing, you don't necessarily have to come out and do all the ballasting in one go. You can come back and do some more later. So now that the ballasting is mostly finished, and I do say mostly because I've still got some bits left to do which are going to be saved till later, the majority of it is done. And so now I'm just going to get some trains running just to test it all out to make sure it all still works. I know that I've already done a couple of other review videos in between doing this video, so you will have already seen trains running on this layout, but there we go. I'm just going to get some running anyway, just to show that it is all working. So as you can see, everything seems to work perfectly fine. Now in front of you on camera we have a fairly new acquisition. Now I have stopped this model momentarily because I know that not all of you are a fan of handheld shots, so that's why I've done this. So what you'll see in front of you is a Batman Class 47. This is the older tooling model, not the new tooling. This is 47522 Doncaster Enterprise in the apple green livery. Now this model was produced by Batman as a collector club model. It isn't something that comes about very often these days, although at the time I acquired this model there was actually quite a few that turned up on eBay. But it isn't normally something that comes about very often. So it is a fairly scarce model, but it is something that I have been after and wanting for a long time. This model I acquired sometime after the layout was torn down. It was actually in March when I acquired this model. But it had to stay in its box because obviously at the time I had no layout to run it on. But now they've got the layout to the point at where it is now, I felt it was time to get this model out of the box and give it a good run in. It already has had some running in already. I gave it an hour or so in each direction, and I have been running it with this TPO train, with my TPO coaches. Not entirely prototypical for this loco, but what do I care? And this model I purchased for, I think it was 165 quid. Brand spanking new, in absolute mint condition, nothing wrong with it, never been run until now obviously, and I paid 165 quid for it. There was a second hand one, well, and technically this model was second hand, but there was a used model that turned up that was going for at the time just over 200 quid. Yet I got a brand new one that had never been out of the box and never been run for a lot cheaper. It comes with all the bits and bobs. It's got the certificate here. This one is number 26 of 504 produced. It also has the accessory bags. There's all the buffer beam details, plus the speaker. And you've got the H name plates, still sealed in the bags, which I will be fitting these later on. So I'm well happy with this purchase. I think that's a bargain. The narrow gauge seems to be working fine, though I had to clean the tracks before I could run anything because trains wouldn't run properly. I've got the coil unstuck Nesta running around, and behind it is some of Batman's latest R&AD wagons. which I also acquired these before I built the new layout. Have been having issues with the couplings with some of them, which is a bit interesting, but perhaps that will improve later on. More importantly though, like I say, everything is working fine. I haven't come across any issues, so that's great to see. So it's just nice now to be able to sit back and play trains. Well peeps, that's now going to finish off this video. So, like I said, that's the majority of the ballasting done. It's not all finished yet, obviously. I've still got this whole area to do. And there's some bits down over there that need ballasting, but that's not going to be happening just yet. But the majority of the ballasting is complete. And so what I thought now I'd do to end the video, I'm going to do a running session. This is not going to be a big running session like I have done in the past. I will be doing more of those again in the future, but not just yet, not until there's a lot more scenery on the layout, I think. But this will just be a selection of locos hauling various different trains. So it'll be a nice running session just to end this video. And, depending on the size of these videos, I shall do more of these at the end of these videos. But that's the end of this video for now. So we'll get a lot more trains running. So thank you all for watching, and I'll see you again next time. I'll see you again for the next part, which will be probably, I think, track weathering, I think. And then on from there, that's when we can really start focusing on the scenery. But until then, I hope you enjoy this video and the running session that will follow. Thank you all for supporting the channel, and if you haven't yet subscribed to the channel and you like what you see, then why not give us a subscribe. Also feel free to hit the like button and leave a comment, would be appreciated. And also feel free to check out all the other videos that I've on the channel. But until next time, I'll see you again soon. Take care. Bye.